Hi, I'm Alyssa.
I'm Ande.
I'm Brielle.
And welcome to The Dialogue, a chatty writing podcast that feels like you're hanging out with your friends.
Episode 3, everyone. Welcome to episode 3. Woohoo!
We made it. We did it.
3 feels like a milestone.
I feel like this is so podcasty of us of like, oh my gosh, we made it to this episode. Like, I feel like that's very...
Whenever I listen to podcasts, which I'm a pretty big podcast listener over like music throughout my week, and they're like, you can go back to episode 542 to hear about blah, blah. And I'm like, 542? So who knows? Maybe someday we'll get that crazy.
To get to 542.
The whole archive. I hope.
That'd be crazy work.
I believe in us. Totally.
Awesome. So for the viewer, it is currently March 28th, just to give you a time. I feel like it's nice to know where we're at in case you're following along with us in real time so that you know kind of where we're sitting. And I would like to know everybody's update for, I think it's been 2 weeks since we last recorded. So, Anne, do you want to start us off?
Sure. I'm over the moon for this episode because unlike last time, I actually have written since we last had an episode. So I actually have a writing update, which is so exciting. Last time I didn't. I wrote a whole new chapter, a whole new scene into the manuscript, not this past week, but the week before. And it went really well. I felt like it was something I kind of had like a loose outline for what I needed the scene to achieve. And I kind of had a vision for it. So it really was not too bad to dive into. But I do want to talk more about this later. This is just me like pitching a topic. But the intimidation to like hop back in after a break like I'd had was so real. And so I just want to I feel like it'd be fun to talk on what it looks like to break intimidation when you're stepping back into the manuscript after a break, because no matter what, you always have a break with the manuscript, whether for you that feels like a week and that's been an eternity, or you're in a situation like me where it was like a literal month and you're like, what the heck?
I say let's crack it open now. I say let's crack open the case right now.
Yes.
You don't want to get through updates first? Okay, I love it. Okay. Well, then I guess I'll start since I recently did this. I felt like touching grass in the world was so intimidating. I think it's partially just where I'm at in the project. Like I've had other breaks on this project at other points in other drafts. I don't think any of them have been as long as the 1 month break that I had. But I am grateful that the chapter I stepped into was one from Emery's POV, because it's always easier for me to kind of slip back into her narrative than it is my second POV character. So that was like a plus, and I have always loved drafting. Drafting is definitely something that flows easier for me than revision. And so that actually helped lower the intimidation, because I knew that no matter what, no matter how clean I write this scene, it's still a first round of a scene. So I'm going to have to come back and put eyes on this again, versus all these other, chapters that I've been revising. I'm trying to leave them in like the cleanest draft 4 version that I can, where hopefully my next round of edits on them are far more minimal. And so having to like step back into that caliper and flex that muscle again, where I'm like really editing at this high level after not doing that for a month, felt like I just literally don't think I'm capable of it right now. Like there's got to be a warm up to get there. And so, yeah, the win is that I got in the manuscript and wrote the new chapter and put something down and moved forward in the project. The not necessarily loss, but like the bummer part of it was just that I haven't been able to break into those revision chapters still. And I think that's because I know another break is inevitably coming. I mean, I literally could pop a baby out any day now. So I feel like I'm trying not to get, I don't know, I'm back in that intimidation spot again, where it's like I want to get back into the project. I miss working on it, but I'm definitely in like a weird season where it feels like I already know that my brain is just literally not even functioning at the caliber I want it to be at in order to make those drafts. Like I'm not going to be happy with the edits I make right now because my brain can't comprehend the project the way it was 3 months ago. So I don't know. That's like the rock and a hard place in between right now, where it's like I don't want to be taking this long of a break on it, but at the same time, I don't want to do all this work that I end up hating later because I'm aware of my mental state, and it's not the mental state I want to be in when I'm making these edits. But it's just crazy how you can be so intimidated by something you created. Like, this is literally my world, my characters, my words on a page. And why are they so scary to me?
Yes.
So anyway.
It's so funny that for you, like, going into drafting a new scene is, like, what feels less intimidating, because I feel so the opposite. Like, after a break, I would rather go into, like, a book that's already, like, or a scene that's already there to work with, especially if it's in, like, a higher draft. So I'm like, but I think that this also speaks to our our strengths and weaknesses as writers. Like, Andy, I know you love to draft. Like, you are, like, rarely, I don't think I've ever seen you intimidated by, like, writing a first draft of something. Whereas for me, I'm like, I want to work with something that already has been, like, in there a little bit, you know? And so when I come back, even, I remember in the winter when I was working on the last edit, and I would have to, like, draft something new, and I knew it wouldn't come out easy the first time, but sometimes I would have, like, it ended up that, like, Christmas break happened, and then I came back and had to write, like, a new scene basically into a draft 11, and I was so intimidated by that. I was like, I would so much rather just be cleaning something up, because I have to get this, maybe not on the first draft, but, like, within a few drafts to, like, be at the caliber of the rest of the book. And, like, to me, that's so much more intimidating.
I think it really does speak to difference, because I think I fall more in the Andy camp, where I am less intimidated by drafting as well. But it's very fascinating. I feel like you speak, like, I really resonate with what you speak to, of just the intimidation of being like, this pass has to be me clicking it really into that final place. And how can you even trust that the eyes that you bring to it today are going to have the right judgment? Like, that's so hard, especially because sometimes, like, I've been running into this recently where maybe a wording tweak that I did kind of offhandedly last time I looked at this scene, I'm like, why did I do that? It was better before. And I'm finally starting to hit that sort of place where it's like, sometimes I misjudge. And, like, so how do you trust yourself to go into something that you're trying to get to that final polish, knowing that you don't have 5 more times of looking at it necessarily to make it right? Like, now that you're in these later stages, it is kind of like now it has to be coming together. So I totally resonate and understand why that would be intimidating. So just some validation there. I feel like that's super relatable, unfortunately.
It definitely feels like one of those, like, hamster wheel things where it's like you could make infinite edits. Like, I think that's I like the way you worded that, Brielle, of, like, how do you trust yourself? And I think there's a certain level of writing, because it's not linear, you're never going to be able to trust that something genuinely is, like, your best work. It's your best work at a moment in time, and it can be an accurate representation of the best you could do in that time. But if you wait long enough and you don't work on the project, or you keep working on it or whatever, eventually you're going to pass that benchmark that you were at the last time that you, like, clocked the project. And it's going to get better. And then you have to go back and raise the bar on everything else in the project to match it. And it's just like, how do you trust yourself to know that it's ready for you to take your hands off of it, you know? And that's like a down the road question from where I'm at right now in the project. But I think there's still those feelings and that questioning that can apply to the in-process part, which is totally what I feel like I'm facing right now. And I'm, like, so intimidated to not get it right that I'd rather just, like, take the break until I know I have the mental capacity to really dig in and be, like, putting the time and effort into re-immersing myself in the project and getting into the nitty-gritty of, like, what actually needs improved and what's not. Because I feel like right now I could open up a chapter and, like, the capacity of my brain to make revisions is going to be, like, looking at line levels and just, like, not thinking about, like, the actual developmental edits that I need to be making in this act to actually walk away and be like, that was such an effective draft 4. Like, line levels can happen at any point. It's the storytelling aspect that, like, there's fundamentals that need to be improved in order for this draft to achieve what it needs to. And that scares the crap out of me right now.
Well, and something that I found a lot that I always seem to come back to, and I don't know how much this will apply to you right now, Andy, because like chemically your brain is in a place where like you are just a little bit less, but like for the majority of us, right, who are not pregnant, I think something I've come back to is like I am the most capable now than I ever have been. Like I'm more capable, I have more knowledge, I have more experience now than I ever have. And like you said, like sometimes that can be paralyzing of like you'll always find more things, but also you're like, you are capable of handling whatever's in that manuscript. Like you are capable of solving these problems and making it, like I often run into this fear of like, what if I can't replicate this again? Or like, what if I can't get something that's up to this caliber again? Or what if I don't ever remember how it came together? And it's like, well, I was able to do it before and I'm more experienced now and I have more reps and I have more like determination, like all of those things only grow, you know? Or if they go down, like they come back. And so coming back to that and like, also I think something I've learned is I never think of my last, like the past that I'm on as the last time I'm going to look at something, even if it like is. Like as I'm going through, I'm like, I can always look at this again. I can always find something in the future. I don't need to be worried that I'm missing something now. Like I'm always going to figure that out, you know? And so trying to keep that out of the room. I'm actually going to talk about this in my update is like, I'm like physically closing my office door now, but also I'm closing my office door to a lot of other things of like, that does not get to be in the room with me while I'm writing. And one of those things is like, what if I'm not capable of this? Or like, what if I can't replicate this or get it to the spot where it was before?
I feel like there's a lot of cohesion in what our updates are going to be.
Yes.
I'm seeing the threads coming together because I'm like, oh yeah, we're all kind of, okay.
I feel like that is such a strong lead in probably into your update, Alyssa, so I want to let you kind of take the ball from there, but one kind of thought on what you just said. I think that's such a like valuable little like nugget of knowledge that you just shared of like the replication fear is so real because when you put this time and effort into something and you watch it become something you actually admire and are proud of and like you like what you've created, which is such a hard spot to get to as a creative and as an artist, like actually getting to a form of something that you're like, wait, I love what I've done here. I think there is this very real fear of like, can I ever do this again? But it's so easy to undervalue the tools that you built to get it where it is. And you didn't lose those tools. They're literally skills that like are now built into you. And it's not like it was this magic luck that got you to the version of the project that you're at. It was hard work and tangible improvement that you can't backtrack from even if you tried. But your brain just doesn't present it that way. It looks at the final form and is like, and somehow you magically tripped and fell into this version. It's like, I'll never trip and fall in that sequence ever again.
Mm-hmm. I also feel like that's such a multiple books in mindset struggle because I feel the exact opposite where I'm like, I feel 100% confident my next project will be stronger. Like, I'm like...
I'm not personally struggling with will I ever
can't
be able
really
to
relate to that, but I love that for you that you feel good enough about your past work to feel that way. So slay.
Well, thank you. I mean, when you get something to draft 11, it's like, I don't know if I can do this again, you know?
Yeah.
But it's funny because, I mean, I'll get into my update in a second, but when you were talking about, like, it's not this luck that you trip and fell, I think sometimes... I love when people talk about, like, I get into the flow, like, I feel like I get to this magical special place with writing, but also I think sometimes that can really get in your head of, like, what if I can't get in that place? What if I only could get into that place with this project, in this certain room I was in this certain state, on this random Tuesday, and all of those things have to be there again, and that doesn't get to be in the room with me either. Because that is so, like, you hear people talk about writing romantically in that way, where it's like, I just felt like there was something special about that mountain that I was on when I was writing that book. I think Sarah J. Maas said something like that. And it's like, sometimes you do have those magical experiences as a writer, but they're not necessary. Like, you didn't need that specific chair to make that happen. You know, like, that was from you.
Yes, it's almost like getting a little superstitious about writing to the point where it can interfere, where it's like, oh no, I didn't do the thing that I didn't get the normal drink. I'm not sitting at my usual cafe. Like, nothing's gonna flow out. It's like, no, you could be in a totally different circumstance and have just as good of a writing day. But I understand also the desire, however, to try to orchestrate situations like that because it's like, you're trying to get your brain into a different mode, right? Like it's like a little prompt, which I understand. I use stuff like that myself too.
Absolutely.
But I do think it can hold you back when it's like, oh, if I don't have every single domino in the right place and my brain is not totally clear and blah, 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 it can get to a point where you're like hindering yourself with that, you know?
Yeah, which is so interesting because, like, in the bare bones of it, the only things that are required for you to actually, like, the only things you literally need are your mind and the opportunity to write something. That's
like the interface.
Every time you sit down to work on it, that's the only two things that are ever constant.
It's actually funny because my update, I will get into my update now. I will stop teasing my update. But I'm going to sound like such a hypocrite in like 20 minutes, so I hope you're all excited about that. But my general update is there's been a lot going on this week in terms of writing and querying and all of that. I had the Smooch Pit showcase this week, or like got the results from that this week. If you don't follow me, that is a writing mentorship I was in with my last project. So this week I received the requests from, there was like an agent showcase where a bunch of agents looked at it and then they could request materials. And so I got all those requests. I also that day decided I'm just going to send all of my queries. So I sent like something like 50 queries that day as well. Casual. So that was going on. And I mean, there's a lot brain-wide. Like if you've ever queried or had a full request out, it's so hard to get your mind off of that because it's like you could literally be hearing at any moment like, oh, you got a request, or oh, you have an offer, or, oh, this is a rejection that's going to kind of derail the rest of your day. But it's also one of those things like you just can't think about. Like you could also hear nothing for months. So it's not helpful to like sit and think about it. There's nothing you can do about it. And especially with what my results were, it was very difficult to focus after that. But I've been trying to write my fantasy books, still trying to focus on something totally separate. And I've been noticing, even before the showcase, that, like, I've been having trouble, like, I've been having more resistance than usual. And I think our first episode, we talked about resistance a lot and how, like, and so at first a lot of that was like, oh, I need to figure this plot out. And now it's like, okay, the plot is figured out. I know where I'm going. I know what the next chapters are. I have the time to write. There's nothing to distract me except for all of this publishing stuff going on. But, like, other than that, I've just been having a lot more, like, I just am not as eager to get on the page. And I've also not been as happy with what I'm writing. And I think all of this kind of goes together because I think part of what's making it difficult is this, like, I want these words to be coming out a little bit better because the first book of this series, every time I wrote, I was like, this is crazy. This is great. This is hitting and it's a first draft. And because it's like it's a continuation of the same story. And so now coming into this draft, there was this pressure of that I didn't want to be there, but was of like, I want it to feel the same way. Like I want to be as happy with this book as I was with the last one, which of course then gets in your head. And so all of these things combined have just made it like this kind of perfect storm of I realize like I need to figure out how to manage this and still be able to draft, because if I'm going into traditional publishing, like I'm only going to get more noise in my head. Like if it's like I'm going to have edits coming back from my agent, I'm going to have ARC reviews coming in, I'm going to have all this stuff in the future, and I think, all of us will, that's not TradPub specific, but I need to be able to find a space in my writing that I can still write without, like, during, like, craziness. And I do hear stories of people, I think it's very common that people are not productive when they're on submission, like they can't write, or they have a lot of trouble when they're waiting for things to come back, and I've never been on sub, so I can't speak to that experience, but I've been trying to figure out how to get my brain in a place where I can just focus regardless of what's going on. And so I alluded to it earlier, but I've been physically closing my office door, and it's also metaphorical, so I'm just a little dramatic. But I never close my office door. I don't really close the doors of my house very often, but because they're old and the knobs don't really work. But I'm like, okay, I'm closing the door and I'm leaving out I don't get to bring in my email. I don't get to bring my physical phone. I have my computer on airplane mode. I have only certain music I can listen to, and also, like, if thoughts pop up about, like, oh, this agent said this, or oh, this query came back this way, or that does not get to be in the room with me while I'm writing. And it's one of those things, it's hard to control what goes on in your head, but if a thought like that pops up, I hear it and I'm like, I'm not thinking about that, or like I have something that I say, and this is kind of like a mindfulness thing anyway. Like I learned this through dealing with intrusive thoughts, and so it's kind of like, oh, get to use that skill now with my writing too, of like,
yes.
I don't need that thought right now, or like, I don't need to think about that, or like, okay, that's fine, that could be true, bye. Like, I'm focused here, I don't need to give space to that. And I've also been like, in my breaks of writing, I've been like reading other books, or I've been like journaling at the beginning of a session, like looking through my notes of what is in this chapter, and also bringing myself back to like, what do I like about this scene? Like, I'm writing the scene, I get to decide how it goes and who's in it and what it's about. Like, why am I writing it this way? And if I don't have an answer, let's write it a different way. You know, like actually engaging with the material more than just like thinking about like, oh, these words aren't hitting. I'm like, stop thinking about that. Start thinking about the actual scene. You know, so that is my update. This morning I did write for like 2.5 hours, I think. And it was, I mean, it's not perfect. It's always when you implement something new like this, you're still going to get those like, I don't think intrusive thoughts really qualifies here, but similar. They act similarly where it's like, well, that agent said it was too romancy for her. Or like, and I'm like, I'll move that one out of the way. Like, you're still going to have that pop up. But, like, deciding beforehand, like, I am not giving attention to that when I'm here in this creative space, you know?
Alyssa, I love the practicality of, like, the practices you're trying to implement with this. Yeah, sure, closing the office door might seem a little dramatic, but, like, okay, we're creatives. Come on. It's kind of par for the course. I really love the, like, rigidity you're setting up for yourself in terms of like the airplane mode, or like doing your journaling ahead of time and really reviewing and like finding an answer. If you don't have an answer for why you're writing this chapter this way, it needs to have an answer before you just sit down and write it.
Yeah.
I think like, I mean, Brielle and I have talked about this many times, but like obviously you have so many more reps in terms of like writing a book and finishing it off and like getting it to that completed point. And for me, there's like so much admiration in a lot of what you just described, because it's kind of this like version I want to get to someday in terms of how seriously I'm taking the time I'm putting into the manuscript, no matter which manuscript it is. Like, there's so much that you're doing that feels like you're taking this so seriously and taking yourself seriously. And then that gives you the power to say no to the thoughts that pop up that are like, not what you need to hear. It's like, okay, we're not here for the games and the thoughts that are not helpful and the things that are insecurities. Like, I'm here to strive and get better and do these things. And so anyway, I just feel like a lot of people who just listen to you talk about that are probably so encouraged and inspired of like what they could do in their writing routine to potentially shift the entire narrative internally and the way they feel when they're sitting down to work on their stuff. So just the biggest kudos to you for that. I'm so proud of you for that. That's so great.
Yeah, I'm also very proud of you. And I feel like knowing you and knowing like just watching your evolution, it's so cool to see you in this stage. Like, I think probably Ande feels
it's
similarly.
been like for one day, so let's not get crazy.
No, but girl, it's like you were writing like an author. Yes.
I think it's the mindset shift of like this desire to like nurture and respect your creative self is what I see from that. And I think that that's valuable. And it is kind of crazy. I feel like all of our brains are really synced up right now.
Yeah. Do you want to go into your update, Brielle?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I feel like mine is in a very similar vein. So I guess first, like, logistically, what I've kind of been working on this week is I mean, I've been revising, but I've also been working on organization for this draft, because I've mentioned, I think, that my organization for going into draft 4 was kind of like a little bit all over the place. So I had like my beta comments in the beta documents. Some of them were still like not transferred over. And then I had a Word document with like notes from all the calls I did, and things were just kind of in different places. So I finally went and like copied everything into my draft 4 document, which was really good. And then I made a little like chart for myself where I put all of the chapters down like the side. And then I had like different editing passes as the columns. So like, okay, this is the pass where I'm moving over my comments. This is edit pass 1. Then I'm getting it ready for Mick, which is my current beta reader. And like putting each stage as a box so that I can be filling something in. So yeah, so I feel like that's been really helpful because having a very visual showcase of my progress mid-draft, because it hasn't just been one pass in this draft. It's like I try to implement the change, then I need to go smooth it out. Then Mick gives me her comment, then I implement that. And all of those steps made it feel like I was treading water when really I was getting through steps. It just wasn't like the whole draft is done. You know what I mean? So that was really helpful. I recommend if you're going into a revision that has stages or that just feels like a lot, maybe try something like this, a little spreadsheet where you can fill things in. But then on the mental side of things, I feel like kind of similarly to what Alyssa was going through, I feel like I've really been having a reckoning with myself, not to be dramatic, where I'm reevaluating my values in writing. And I always come back to this kind of reminder, right? It's something that we have to rediscover for ourselves. But like tapping back into the heart of writing and like the purpose behind it and why I do this, and also like releasing some perfectionism, because Alyssa got to witness the firsthand crash out and resolution of this week. I feel like I finally realized that I had stepped away from just high standards into nitpicking and self-censoring in a way that was actually really limiting me creatively. And something that I do genuinely think has helped my work is the improvement of my standards, interrogating my work and not just caring about the fun of it, because that's very much what I cared about at the beginning and we've learned since then, right? But I think I started veering towards a lot of self-policing, and like sometimes it's just like all the little tidbits that you hear other people say about writing, whether it's like the little cliches or rules, or like, oh, don't have your character say that because that's corny, or like don't have your character do this, don't write this kind of scene because that's like all these little things that start accumulating into your brain and kind of like form together into this like perceived inner critic. At least that's been my experience. And sometimes that can be in my head, and then it's like, kind of like Alyssa said, you stop thinking about the story and you start thinking a little bit too much about yourself as the writer, or like the ego of it. How can I impress people? How can I look like I know what I'm doing? And then you're thinking about all the wrong things because it ceases to be about the characters and the immersion and the passion. And it starts being, how do I make myself look like I know what I'm doing? And you're like pulling your own little strings almost. And I don't know. I guess I just kind of realized that a lot of that is noise, and I do my best creative work when I'm able to push away that noise and be like, let me reconnect with what I like instead of writing for a perceived audience, an inner critic, And like, I do feel like that my work is better when I'm able to have that mindset. So yeah, I feel like I kind of reckoned with that this week and realized that I had gone into that nitpicking self-censory territory and was able to recalibrate and remember like, oh, I love these characters. This is like kind of a take it or leave it mindset. This is what I want to create. I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. People can resonate or not, but I need to be okay with that and not try to like prove myself with every sentence. We don't need to do that. So
that's so good, Brielle.
I have a lot of thoughts. My specific thoughts, it's like tangentially related. 'Cause I feel like you went through this cycle where it was like, okay, I feel like I'm uninspired creatively, so I need to like seek out like craft advice and like writing advice and like writing content and craft books and all that kind of stuff. And then I think that this is a cycle a lot of writers go through, is like, you're like, okay, I need some inspiration. So then you start to consume that content, and then you consume so much of that content that it like becomes in your head while you're writing. This happens for me. And I think it's a really tricky balance of like, I think as writers, it's really important to get better at our craft by consuming that kind of content and learning things and learning about different tropes that don't tend to work in certain genres, or like this happens with querying advice a lot, where it's like, this is how you should write a query, and these are all the things you should do, and these are all the things you shouldn't do, and here's like very specific rules. And it's like actually good to learn all these things and know all these things, but you have to learn them and know them, but not let them get in your head when you're writing, because it's like, if you're thinking about those things, so it's like this balance of like, yes, it's good to know all this, because then you can like intrinsically or naturally do it without thinking about it later, but it's like the process of learning all of that is something I'm really glad not that I'm done learning, let's not get crazy, but like I've learned a lot of that, and I've spent years kind of consuming that content, and now I'm glad I just have it all like naturally, because having that in your head when you're writing can be really tricky. It's just such a tricky balance, because you want to learn, but you also don't want, like you said, to be writing it for the rules rather than to use the rules to help you when it makes sense in your book, you know?
And I do also think it's worth mentioning, there's like different kinds of writing rules, right? Yeah. There's like basics of structure, or like, this is how we care about a character. Those things, happy to have those in my brain all the time.
Yes, for sure.
But then there's also like these small, more subjective taste type things that like, while might be good to keep in mind, it's not hard and fast. And honestly, I think also like going to look at fiction, like reading fiction is helpful here too, because there's so many things that like I'd heard one person be like, oh, don't do that. And then I would be reading a book by an author I love and respect and see them do that. And suddenly my mindset on it changes. And I'm like, oh, so you can do that. And it's like, nothing really changed there besides me seeing the fact that it could be done and it's fine. Like, it's not actually. So I do think that's important to remember too, because great published books are breaking common advice all the time. Obviously, don't do that just to do it, right? Like, it's a balance between not being stubborn and like wanting to grow, but also having enough confidence to be like, if I like this and it's functioning, I don't need to strip it out just because one person said, don't write a scene where they do this activity. You know what I mean?
Right.
So anyway.
There's also some different stages. Like, when I'm outlining, that's when I consume probably the most content like that, because it doesn't get in my head when I'm outlining, because it's like, actually, I need some help me. Help me, books. Yeah, I need to figure this out. But when I'm drafting, like, get a craft book away from me. Like, I don't want to see a craft book within 70 miles of me when I'm drafting a first draft.
Alyssa, and then, you don't want to see a craft book ever. You want the bullet points
you
of
know
the craft book.
Actually, I get it away from me.
But that's true. And I think it goes back to something we talked about in a previous session, where it's like, because drafting is the most heartful part for us, I think, you know, the most like soulful, expressive part. I think it makes sense that that's the time when we want the least outside voices, essentially, once we know in the outlining stage that the pieces are gonna function, thank God, and we're not gonna end up in a pit crawling our way out, clawing out our eyes. Once we know that that's gonna work, then I think that's the time to release a little and like let flow find you, you know?
Mm-hmm. She says as we're both still mid-crawl out of the pit.
Yeah, we're crawling. We're climbing our way out. We can admit this.
We're still currently working our way out of the soulful pit that we dug in our first drafts.
Right.
Delicate. This is why we do think about the craft stuff, guys.
Right.
It's all a balance.
Right. This is why Brielle and I are like, give me the craft book. Give it to me, please. Yeah.
Should we dive into that? Because Alyssa, I think that was the subject you wanted to talk about this week, right?
I did actually want to talk about
is
craft
it?
books.
Oh my God.
just if we needed something to talk about, because, you know, us, we just can't, we always need topics, or else we struggle to fill an hour.
I feel like we fill an hour with ease.
No,
I think that was extreme sarcasm.
Oh, okay.
But I said it in a way where it was like, sometimes my sarcasm sounds like I feel like
are we just self-deprecating our ability to fill an hour?
I think crazy. This is one of our major strengths, is that we can fill many hours. Yes, I was thinking about things that have been relevant with the three of us in our writing recently, and I feel like this was like a little while ago, I guess, but talking about craft books, like we talked about the group chat last time about like things, like you can tell our writing's going in the group chat. Well, to my dismay, one day the group chat starts to become, I read this craft book. Here's this craft book I love, and I'm like, my nemesis has arrived. Okay, not nemesis. Let's not get crazy. I just personally, I always find that craft books, not always, craft books often do more harm than good for me. Yeah. I think it's, as I've been saying, it's a lot of like the rules get in my head, or I start to think as writing as this equation where I need to hit certain things certain ways or it's bad. And I think especially going trad pub, I think that kind of exacerbates this, because it's like, okay, well, if I'm going to get an agent, I need to do all these things that these craft books say, because that's how I'm going to stand, like that's how I'm going to get to that point. And then I actually find that like reading a lot of fiction does a lot more for me than crafts books do. And I have, like, don't get me wrong, I have found value in craft books. Specifically, like, I use Save the Cat Beats. But I don't typically, like, read the actual book. Like, I like craft books for their, like, plotting guides and their resources, rather than the actual, material in there. Because also I sometimes get a little meta, and I'm like, okay, wait, how did these people come up with all this? They just wrote that. Like, anybody could just write that. Like who makes them the authority? And that's not what they're saying. Like, most people who are writing a crap book aren't saying, nobody actually is saying, like, this is the only way to do anything. But I, as, like, my personality is, I take it that way. Like, I read something and then that gets in my head, and I start to feel like I need to do it that way because this person said so, rather than focusing on what I actually want the story to be and how I want it to go. So I'd love to hear your perspective, because I know both of you have been really loving crap books recently, which is great. I'm glad it's been helpful.
Okay. I do have some thoughts, and then Ande, I would love to hear what you have to say as well. I feel like I have a overall positive but nuanced relationship with craft books. I mean, a craft book did bust me out of the literal mental prison that I'd been in for weeks and gave me the idea that I needed for this section. So it saved me. It was a lifeline. Okay. So there's that. But there's also the fact that, like, there's still things in craft books that I don't resonate with and that I do kind of throw away. Like, for example, Story Genius was incredibly helpful to me in terms of, like, some of the concepts that were introduced in terms of how I was thinking about things. But then I hit a certain percentage where it got into her very specific approach of, here's how I write a scene card, and, like, really nitty-gritty things like that. And it didn't necessarily resonate with how I view a scene, so I just put that away for now. It's like, okay, I got some great value from this. I resonated with some of the concepts, but your very specific approach isn't exactly how I view it, so I'm going to leave that part by the wayside. And I think that's kind of how I try to view craft books in general, is not, I'm taking this as the one source of truth, but if something clicks with my brain and it already lines up with the way that I view story, great, I'm going to take that as a resource. But if something either is worded in a way that I don't resonate with, or just is a difference in how we view story, because there are misalignments sometimes when you're reading craft books, everyone has their own perspective on what story is. I can just discard that. So I think that's kind of how I view it, is like, I take what resonates, I discard what doesn't, and try not to put too much weight on, is there something wrong because I don't resonate with this one strategy or this one tidbit? No, it's just, I just see it differently. And I do also think, because I'm engaging with this stuff, having at least a couple years of writing under my belt, it's easier for me to weed through what does and does not click with my brain, versus if I had been starting and consuming 20 craft books, I probably would have gone into information overload thinking I needed to implement everything. So I think that helps, having a little bit of experience filter to be like, that resonates, that doesn't. I don't know. What do you think, Ande?
What you just said about how, like, there's pieces that can be a breakthrough tool for you in there, but then there's other parts that, like, end up going by the wayside just based off of your own experience and understanding of the way you view story. I resonate with that 100%. I think a really good example of it, and if you saw me turning away while you were talking, I was looking for this because I knew it was on the bottom shelf. I did a whole YouTube video on this when I started my channel. This book, Refused to be Done by Matt Bell. 100% is the only reason I ever got through a first draft of anything. So I feel like there's so much value to me in what this book was at the time that I started writing this project, which was now over 2 years ago. And the whole concept of this book is how to write and rewrite a novel in 3 drafts. And I was 100% stuck in the wheelhouse of editing as I went. Like the classic, you are trying to finish something that you want to write, but you are just stuck in the hamster wheel of always trying to rewrite the beginning and make it perfect and blah, blah, blah. And at that time, I didn't even I had never read Save the Cat or anything about just great story structure. Like how does an actual story arc function from start to end or whatever. So for me, reading anything that was did you know it's possible to just push through and write it bad the first time and then you can go back and fix it later, was so freeing to hear someone say that. So I think that there's always going to be more advice out there and more craft knowledge that is some type of a breakthrough key for you that you haven't heard yet. And I think that that's probably true no matter where you're at in your writing journey, whether it comes from a book or a conversation with another author or something or writer or whatever. Maybe it comes in different formats, but no matter what, Alyssa, you just went through this whole mentorship program where you were being advised by someone who's published. So it's you were receiving craft advice that whole time. It just wasn't in a physically bound book,
Yeah.
But anyway, I think for me, I'm always going to be attracted to that kind of commentary because I know that it can grant me keys to certain doors that I didn't know how to unlock by myself. And so I like the potential, what could this do for me and what could this unlock for me? And that's what draws me to craft projects. And I just am very aware of the fact that no matter how inclined you are to storytelling by nature or not, when you start, you're a novice. And I'm just now, Brielle, you said you have 2 years of writing experience now in terms of, obviously you had script writing prior to this, but in terms of what you're doing right now, you and I have had a very similar timeline of when we started our projects versus where we're at now. And I feel like I'm just now scratching out of the surface of I don't know if I'd say I'm novice anymore, but I certainly wouldn't walk around and call myself an expert or there's still so much knowledge that I know is to be gained. And I think the moment I start feeling I'm no longer seeking a well of information is the moment I'm going to stop growing, because there's only so much I could teach myself, And so, but then again, at the same time, to go back on that, this book was my Bible when I was finishing my first draft, because it was the only, because it gave me that key, I was oh my gosh, this must be the way to write a novel. And now there's still some really useful points in this book. And there were things that when I read it, I heard this author first on a podcast on the, I can't remember if he was on Writers on Writing or The Shit No One Tells You About Writing, but he was on one of those 2 writing podcasts, and they interviewed him. They were talking about this, and there was some sentences that he said that I literally remember being in the car and going, yes, out loud, because I was that's the first time anyone has ever said something like that from the time that I can remember first trying to write a story, I resonate with. And it's oh my word, someone else said that out loud. I feel seen by that. But now that I've, tried to write a book in 3 drafts or whatever, there's a whole pantsing approach to his point of view here that now that I've tried that method, maybe someday down the road I could, write and rewrite a novel in 3 drafts because I have 20 years of writing experience and that's all it would take me. But now I know that okay, operating in that version of this structure, there's a lot of that has to go by the wayside now. So it's I took the key, got what I could from it, and now even in retrospect, what was once the perfect solution for me is not. So I think that's the other thing is it's important to remember the things that you are internalizing from craft books, how those tools apply to your current state as a writer may shift. And so it's important not to make hard and fast rules that you don't allow any flexibility in, because you're just going to box yourself in and therefore box in your growth. So anyway, those are my thoughts on craft books.
No, I love that. And it made me think about, I really believe that you get the resources that you need at the time that you need them. For me, it's often not in the form of a craft book, and I think that comes from so many different places. I remember in college, trying to figure out a certain plot point, and it's like I overheard a conversation about something totally different that unlocked something for me, and I'm like, I really believe that whether that's you picking up craft books every couple of, like, if you feel like I need to read a craft book and you read it and you find the perfect thing, or you're listening to a podcast, or you're watching a vlog and somebody talks about something, like, I feel like those, like, what you're seeking, you will find, not to go all Bible honest, but, like, seeking, you will find the craft advice. Like, I think that people really find it when they need it. And I used to listen to a lot of writing podcasts back before I had a lot of writing community. And I think that gave me a lot of, like, I think a lot of things that are in craft books, I got that way. And I was also, I'm like looking at my bookshelf behind me, and there was the year after I got out of college, I read, I think, like 200 books that year. And I feel like that was my, like, crash course on writing. Like, I've always been a much more tactile learner than, like, a listen, like, read and figure it out. Like, I always needed to do the math problem before I could, like, I couldn't just see, like, the instructions on the math problem. Like, I needed to do it before I could learn it, And so I think that also, like, reading and seeing it that way, seeing all different types of plot structures, like, executed. I wasn't doing that consciously, but I think that's where I'm getting a lot of that. And I bring that up because I don't want, every time I talk about how I don't really like craft books, I always get some comments that are like, it's really important to learn and grow, and, like, you don't want to stop learning. And I'm like, I really agree with that. I just don't find that typically in craft books,
I think that that's a very limited mindset to be like, because this resource unlocks things for me, it must unlock things for everyone. Like, like, all of our brains are different. You might get a ton of value from one craft book that someone else found completely useless, and it's just, it doesn't matter. It's, like, literally just whatever is valuable to your process and whatever unlocks things for you. And that can look so many different ways. That's why there are such a variety of resources and ways to up-level your craft, It doesn't have to be this one form that happens to work for some people and not others. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would argue that many times writing podcasts have been just as useful as a craft book to me. Yeah, auditory stuff goes just as far with me as tangible reading, for sure. So I think no matter where outlet you're getting it from, maybe it's a mentor, maybe it's a book, maybe it's a podcast, maybe it's just conversations with other people in the writing community. I mean, everyone has their different strengths and weaknesses by nature. So, like, you guys are going to laugh. This is my example. But I feel like Alyssa and I were talking in the fall about how she was trying to add more detail and description into her book and more, like, visual imagery for settings specifically. And I was trying to add an interiority. And there's just, like, a certain balance that was kind of funny because we were literally working on the thing that the other person tends to do really well without thinking. And so it was just kind of like, but there's so much I learned through just, like, talking about the wrestle of trying to add an interiority in my book with both of you. Both of you do that by nature better than me. And so it was just like, I didn't read a book on interiority, but I feel like I've improved in that already just from conversation. So I think it's also, like, seeking just conversation and advice and thoughts from other people who have different strengths than you, because nobody is the exact same as someone else in all the areas,
Just your permission, if you, like, feel like craft books are hurting you, and you feel, because I had a lot of imposter syndrome about that. I was like, I don't know if imposter syndrome is the right word, but I was like, I feel like this should be helping me. Like, is there something wrong with me that, like, I always feel worse about my book after reading a craft book? Whereas a lot of people feel better about their book, or they have an idea for their book. And I'm like, I always feel like my book is terrible after I read any craft book. So if you feel that way, like, don't just shut out all writing advice, but it's okay to not resonate with craft books. And you can find those through, like, reading a lot of fiction, or listening to a podcast, or just writing a bunch of things, like writing a bunch of drafts. Like, you can learn a lot that way too.
I think it honestly ties back to, like, there's things that give you this healthy hunger for improvement, and then there's things that only serve to sabotage or make you feel insecure. And I think, like, it sounds like for you, the craft books are falling into that second camp of, this is only getting in my head. This is only making me not able to, like, get my best creative work out, versus, like, for me and Andy, it might be like we leave that feeling rejuvenated, motivated, like, oh, I could do this, like, you know? So it totally depends. And I think fiction is this way too. Like when I first started writing, I was a lot more nervous to read books that I thought were really good because I thought it would get in my head in a negative way. And I was like, what if I read this masterpiece and suddenly I'm like, oh my God, I should never write a word again? When actually what I've found is it's the opposite. It's like reading really great things makes me want to go create art, and same with watching a great movie or whatever. So you just have to learn what is healthy motivation for you, healthy hunger for improvement, and what prompts just comparison or like insecurity and you holding yourself back, getting in your own way.
100%.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, I do have an email from a listener that we can go through. This one is from Jessie. So thank you for writing in. She says, "Hey writers, I've been enjoying the podcast and would love your insight on a dilemma I'm facing. I started a project for NaNoWriMo many eons ago, and at the time really enjoyed everything about it, even though I had no idea what I was doing. Never finished, ran out of steam in the dreaded late Act 2, but always intended to go back to it. Since then, I've done a lot more learning and writing and finally feel like I'm somewhat qualified to actually revisit this beloved book and turn it into something worth publishing. I know it will involve a lot of restructuring, rewriting, and all-around work, but I'm looking forward to getting into it. My question is this: how would you approach it? Would you dive back into the older unfinished draft, or make an entirely new outline and start over? I think I'm blinded by my attachment to what I wrote the first time around, and that may be preventing me from looking at it as critically as it needs. It would be easy to say, hey, this is great. Why did I ever think I needed to redo this? But the fact that I chickened out of finishing it is a pretty good sign the story isn't as fully realized as I need it to be. But at the same time, I don't want to lose the energy and fun that is so apparent in the original version. Thoughts?
Ooh.
Start over.
Yeah,
My thought, start over. Trust that you will bring the fun and the elements that you like into this new version. You're not gonna you're not gonna lose that by rewriting it. But as a girly who spent 6-8 months on trying to work with my crappy first draft and then ultimately had to rewrite it in the end anyway and just wasted a ton of time, just rewrite the thing. It's going to be easier. You're going to be able to get a stronger foundation. That's my vote.
Yeah, I was in the exact same thought. I feel like if it means something to you or would be useful to what you carry into the next version, you could acclimate yourself with some type of a reread, or just like hitting some of the points in the story that are currently there that you know you love, and then like identify what it is about that you love right now and work that into this new outline that's fleshed out, and that will make you more excited to revisit those. But 100%, I have never regretted rewriting something in my book from scratch when I knew the old version wasn't functioning. Trying to manipulate something to function at the caliber that you need it to that is just inherently not working, versus just taking what was good about it in essence and putting it into a new take on it, you will always walk away feeling more confident in that second version. That's totally my opinion.
And I also feel like, this is not my typical, I'm not like a big rewrite it from the beginning girl. And, but I do feel like in this case, because it was like very early for you and like you feel like you've grown so much, I would also just recommend going in. I would recommend like reading it, loving it, writing what you like about it. If there's like a standout line or a standout paragraph where you're like, oh, I really ate with this, like maybe keep all of that in one separate document that when you get to that scene, you can kind of pull it in. Like, I think if there is a section or lines that you really love, like keeping those in a separate place where it's like, as you're writing, you know, like, okay, I have that to come back to. Because I think something that could be tricky when coming back to an old is like you said in your email, like not wanting to let go of the fun and the joy that's there. So I think leaving it open for yourself to like, I could add that in if I wanted. Like I could add in parts. I'm not just like totally scrapping this whole thing. I'm keeping it somewhere that I can access it if I want to. Because I think there's sort of like, it's sort of this trick that you can do where it's like, I'm going to use all of that, but I'm just going to write it all from scratch again. But like I have that I can look at if I want to. And what will more than likely happen is as you're writing, you'll be like, wow, what I'm writing is so much better than that. And I don't even want to take anything from that. Or you'll like look at it and you're like, oh, I'm coming up to the scene I want to copy over. And then you'll read the scene and be like, wait, I can do that way better now. You know?
Yeah, it is totally like gaslighting yourself. Gaslight yourself into like, you can use that if you want, and then you won't need to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say, like, in my own redrafting from scratch experience, I thought I would save more than I did. Like, going into it, I was like, maybe I'll use... No, I didn't save. I saved maybe, like, a paragraph, like, you know, so I think, yes, tell yourself that you can go back, but I would also try to create a sense of letting go of that past version, because if you're constantly trying to salvage, you will drive yourself crazy, and it won't flow in the way that it will if you treat it like almost like a new project. Okay, this is a new thing. Like, I'm not piecemealing this together, because you get yourself into traps with that.
That's
I think.
True. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's where like asking yourself, what about it is fun right now, or what about it is the thing that makes me what's giving it that je ne sais quoi? It's probably not the literal words on the page in the order that they're in that is making you like, if I change that, the whole thing's ruined. It's probably something about the character or something about the world, or maybe a couple play on words that you have on there that you're really attached to. And like, those are all things you can take, you know? So really try to pinpoint or make a list, or at least just a general understanding of like, why do I love it the way that it is? And how can I incorporate that into what's next? But also get excited about, like, if you're going to re-outline the story, and like she said in her email, clearly there was something wrong with the story structure because she wasn't able to flush it out to the end. I think get excited and daydream about the stuff that you haven't yet written that you're probably going to love a lot more than what you already have, because if you allow yourself to think that big, you'll fill that space somehow. So
yeah. I also will say, I don't know how long it's been exactly since you wrote this book, like if you've written other like full projects between this, but depending on the situation, if it's like you've maybe not written a full other project since this, I would, and if you find that you're having trouble with it, like you keep coming back to the same roadblocks that you were having the first time, or if you're getting to a similar point and you're struggling to get past it, I would recommend like write something totally different from beginning to end, so you don't have to deal with those problems that you created for yourself, because likely the next thing that you outline you'll have learned, you know, and so you're starting from scratch. You won't have to, you know, remake the smoothie for the dozenth time. Like you can just move forward with something where you won't make the same mistakes. But if you've had a lot of space and you want to go back and give it a shot because you love it, like I think totally do that. But also don't be married to the way that the plot was before, because, you know, something was off. And so let yourself treat it as a totally new thing.
Yep.
I totally agree. And I know that, like, yes, my like truest, most unfiltered answer would kind of be more in that vein of like, try something else. Not to say, I know people have a long-standing attachment to ideas, so I don't want to like, you know, kill anyone's joy with that. But I do also think like you something I'm trying to remember and instill in myself is that whole like, ideas are cheap. Just because I liked this one thing doesn't mean I couldn't like something else. The next thing I come up with could be just as great. Like some of those mental shifts of like, just because you had a good idea a few years ago doesn't mean that you couldn't come up with something great now if you wanted something totally new. So don't be too precious, I think, to Alyssa's point about like, oh, well, I had this idea years ago, so I need to see it through. If it would be easier or more refreshing to try to build something with your current skill set, because you had the idea then for a reason, you know what I mean? Like that was very aligned with what you liked at the time. You might be able to create something that resonates with you more now. So I think that's worth thinking about and exploring. Like it's great to try to want to bring this project into the world, but also it's okay if you want to release it and build something.
Because I think sometimes we get this feeling of like, I have failed if I don't get this project to a place where I like, or if I don't finish it, or it's like, I have to finish this project before I can move on. And it's like, you really don't. But we don't know your situation. Like if you think that there's something there and you want to go back to it, like please do that. But this is more so as like general advice. If you feel like there's a project where you think about it and you're like, oh, I still have to go back and finish that. You don't. Like, unless it's like written into a contract, you don't need to finish it. You can move on with something new. Or you could take like something from that idea that you really loved and infuse that into something new, you know? But I think no matter which way you go, I think you just gotta like release how it went in the past, release that you didn't finish it, release that it maybe stalled, and like think of it as like this is day one of working on this book, you know? Do we want to do another Am I the Asshole? Do we have time?
Yes! Put it in!
Okay, let's see. Oh, I think this one's crazy. Let me look. Oh, okay. Okay, buckle up, everybody. Am I the asshole for bringing a legal case against my sister-in-law after she wrote a book about me after ruining her book deal? Let's get into it. I've had what some might refer to as a colorful life. Several long stories that are all very dramatic. The people who know are my boyfriend, my brother, one friend, my grandma, and my therapist. Other than those 5 people, no one else knows anything, and I don't like talking about it. My brother has apparently told his wife about my life. She's a writer and has been working on some secret project for 7 or 8 years. Sister-in-law always said as soon as it was done, she wanted me to read it. When she sent it to me, I realized she wanted me to read it because it's my biography. Actual events from my life in book form, plus the main character has my exact name with a different spelling. With the real spelling in there a couple of times by mistake. And sister-in-law confirmed in an email that it came from what my brother told her about my life. There were a couple of things that were made up, but it was obviously me. She said she'd send it to a friend of hers who works in some tiny publishing house. And when I say tiny, I mean less than 10 employees. Let's not go crazy. The friend liked her book. And wanted to publish
hating on
it.
tiny publishing houses.
Yes, we love small presses. The friend liked her book and wanted to publish it. I told sister-in-law I was uncomfortable with it. She said it was her novel, it was fiction. She spent years working on it, and no one will make the link between me and the protagonist. My boyfriend put me in touch with one of his friends who's a lawyer, and they sent a letter to sister-in-law's publisher saying that if they intended to publish, they could expect a legal case. Their publisher dropped her, and like I said, they're a tiny company. They probably couldn't afford legal fees, particularly this kind, as this stuff can go on for years. Sister-in-law has now decided to self-publish. My brother told me. I found the page she's selling them from. I contacted my boyfriend's friend again, and we sent her another, like, cease and desist, I'm sure. She can't afford the legal fees, but is unemployed, so this book, which has already sold quite a few copies, is her only income. If she takes it down, she loses the money, and with this case, if she ever leaves it up, she can also lose money. Both sister-in-law and my brother called me an asshole for saying that she should be able to write what she wants, and she spent nearly a decade working on this book. They also pointed out that the odds of someone knowing it's me is low. Am I the a-hole?
No.
Isn't that so
that is crazy work? You should, okay, my true feelings on this, unless you get express permission, no one should be so obviously influencing your characters that someone could tell. Like
100%.
Mm-hmm. And to use your name is also one of the craziest parts about that. It's not even like she repurposed one of your life events, which I feel like would maybe be more like, okay, to literally take your colorful life and put your name, that is questionable. That is really questionable.
I think that she should go to court.
Yes!
Personally.
Yeah, I don't think you're the asshole. And where can I get this book?
I know, but I know she wants to not.
I'm kidding, obviously.
Have the
respecting
world know,
you,
but I want to know.
On a real note, though, how colorful we talking? Because this
I'm
feels
sure
like Anyway, yeah, I think that the sister-in-law. Does it suck that she worked so hard on it? Yeah, but like, don't work so hard on something that you never got permission to write. I think that you made a flaw at the start, and you feel wronged now because you made a wrong at the start that you never were honest about. So I think the sister-in-law is 100% the one that's in the wrong and the one that overstepped a boundary and whatever. But also, maybe the brother's a little bit in the wrong, too, because did he have permission to share that story? Doesn't matter if that's your wife or not. If it's a family member who has... Obviously, if there's only 5 people in her life that know, like, that was a pretty short list, and it was also a list of really close family members. So I feel like, this girl got wronged on a couple different levels here to get to the point. But if these are things that she feels this protective about in her life, then yeah, that sucks that they put themselves in a position where they're financially only able to benefit off of your story. Like, why is she unemployed and banking on your life story to make a living? That is not your problem.
Crazy.
Also crazy that that's like the most lucrative thing, like that publishing a book is like super lucrative in your life. But also I have thoughts about this sister-in-law and in terms of how she is as a writer. I think it's kind of a like beginner, it's not to say that you can't write about things in your life, but like if you're going to be a writer, you're going to run out of things in your life or other people's lives. Like you have to be able to originate an idea. And it's so funny because we've been talking about like craft and story structure and all these things. And it's like when you start to write a story, any craft book in the whole Barnes & Noble will tell you, like, you start with the character and you start with their backstory and you build a story around them. And it's like, she didn't have to do any of the work of like developing a character or a setting or a story. It was like she was like a court stenographer, just writing up her life. And I feel like that's a different skill than actually writing fiction.
I totally agree. I agree. I do think, to your point, it can be kind of a beginner writer crutch. And I think this is where self-insert goes wrong, is like, I don't have any other ideas, so I'm just going to write me and the people I know into this book. And it's like, I feel like 9 out of 10 times it is stronger, more interesting, etc., to try and divert from your life more. Push the fiction, more fiction. You don't need to model someone off of your mother. I mean, you can, but like, I think if that's your whole approach to writing, you're closing yourself off from a lot of very interesting creative exploration that comes with coming up with something that's mostly imaginative.
Yeah. And I think there's something to be said about like stretching yourself in a way where like, I think everyone picks up inspiration from real life, whether you want to or not, because that's just like, you get your input from somewhere and your brain is coming up with ideas from somewhere. For me, like a good example of the project I tried really hard to complete before House of Aptos was, I just always call it Project Joy because I never like finished picking a title for it. But the very loose core of that story is inspired by the fact that my mom is adopted, but it's not, my mom is nowhere in that book in terms of like any character representation at all. It was just the concept of not knowing who your biological parent is that inspired what would this story look like for a whole different character in a different slew of events. And so anyway, I think there's a difference between taking like a core thing and being like, what if I took an essence about what that story has going on in it and wrote a whole different thing based off of like writing a book that has to do with grief or writing a book that has to do with like these bigger schemes in life, not specific events. So yeah, I would say the sister-in-law probably could, grow leaps and bounds in that regard.
Right. And I mean, I'm a bit of a hypocrite because I wrote a book about a wedding DJ after I DJ'd like 20 weddings. But again, similar to what you said, Andy, it was like, I brought in, like, this character actually was very similar to me at the beginning of the book, like, had very similar, like, in terms of the job, like, had the same job, had a very similar attitude towards the job, but that wasn't what the story was about, and also, like, memoir is a really great genre, it's tricky to write, like, that is, like, a very valid genre, but it doesn't sound like she's trying to write a memoir, it sounds like she's trying to fictionalize your life.
Sounds like she's trying to make a little cha-ching. A little cha-ching off your life story.
I think you guys make a great point of like, it's great to take themes or character concepts and use like from your life and use that as an ingredient. But I think it ties back to the like, ideally that ingredient is not something that could be picked out of the final product by someone besides yourself, right? Like, that you put that in there and that there's that personal connection. But ideally a reader is not looking at that and being like, oh, I know exactly where that came from. That's so identifiable.
Like, also, girl, if your life is all that colorful, your sister-in-law could have chosen one colorful event and then done a spin-off of something similar that, like, the whole sequence of it is definitely disrespectful. And, you're not the asshole. Go to court.
Also crazy that she was like, hey, do you want to read this?
Yeah.
She said, I can't wait for you to read this story.
Will you beta read this for me? It's your
She
life.
probably was expecting like a thank you for writing my life story.
Right.
I was like, I never knew how to talk about this until now. There was probably a heroic self-paint in her head.
Yes.
I'm totally assuming there, but I could see it.
10 years on like I hope she thinks this is a nice gesture is like, girl.
Like, you're the hero in the story for writing the story.
Right. Question.
Yeah.
Clearly, you've always wanted a way to talk about all this trauma, and you just haven't been able to. So let me do it for you.
And it's the added level of it's like it's not even her sister. It's like her sister-in-law. Like imagine marrying into a family and like the person in this family has had like a rough life situation, and you're like, you know what I should do? I should write a book about that. I feel like I wouldn't even bring it up in conversation. I don't know.
Since I was not around for any of this, I never saw you through it, didn't know you when it happened. I think I'm the perfect candidate to write this story.
Oh, that was our next. Am I the asshole? Yeah. I feel like a lot of these, it's like, well, the answer is like really obvious. It's just kind of like a crazy story.
Right.
I was just going to say, I do think that one had more complexity to it than the uncle one we did, because in that one I can see where, like, on the flip side, as a writer, working on that long on something does suck to then, like I said, her mistake is what she chose to put that many years of work on, and that's on her. But like, yeah, that does, I could see where you would feel bad for, like, also, I'm sure your relationship with your brother is going to be a little different moving forward. So anyway, I think that one was a really good one because there was some nuance in there, but the answer was obvious.
Also, I just want to make it clear that if you are writing about people in your life with permission, we are not trying to tear your thing down. I'm sure you're doing it in a beautiful way with lots of your own creativity infused. I just want to give that disclaimer because I feel like I did dig in a little bit. That was not
permission is also different.
Not to say, the intention is not to say that writing from life is inherently bad. Just ideally, it's not your only ingredient, and also you have permission. Like, those are
everything
the
is
hopes.
written from life in some way. Like, you can't avoid that.
Totally.
So it's like, definitely don't internalize that as you shouldn't be taking inspiration from your life or the lives of those around you, because that's not what we're saying.
Yeah. Right. But it's just don't copy someone else's life and then write it and pretend that it's fiction.
And then use their name.
And then get mad when they're mad. Slay. I think we can end with a little win of the week.
Oh, my win of the week? Okay. First, I have to start with the loss of 2 weeks ago. There was a tornado that went through our town, and actually very devastating. There was a couple lives that were lost, and people lost their homes, so just really terrible stuff. And Noah and I fell somewhere within the caliber of damage there. We did get our car, absolutely looks like a boulder fell on it from the hail damage, which was just crazy. Like, that's the first time in my life I've ever been around, not just like when it's tornado watch and they're like, oh, the conditions are right. Like, I've never been around for a tornado warning before or had one go through. So that was really scary. And the hail was super intense. And it was like, not fun. But anyway, our primary car, we do have 2 cars, but we basically operate as a 1-car family with this car, is the one that was totaled because the other one is not that dependable. But of course, that one was fine. So anyway, that was our bummer. And we still are working with insurance to get that all figured out and everything. But when we originally went to go get a rental car, as you can imagine, the wait list in this area for a rental car was 1,500 deep, and the closest a second rental car location that is 40 minutes away was 500 deep. So we were somewhere on the list of 2,000 people that are waiting for cars. And so we didn't get a rental car for about 2 weeks, and then Noah is in a wedding this weekend that's about 3 hours from here. And we just were really nervous of how he was going to get there because our car that we now have is not safe to drive those distances, and it's not safe on the highway. It's more like a get around town car. And obviously I'm 39 weeks and 1 day pregnant. So I could go into labor at any time, and we just needed a way for him to be able to like safely get back here if I did go into labor. And so anyway, miraculously on Friday morning, on Thursday morning, I thought, I'm just going to call and see if they happen to have something open now. And they did. And so we were able to go in right away and get a car after 2 weeks of them being like, we have nothing. I just was like, I don't know, I'll give it one more try. And so my win is that Noah was able to take a safe car to this wedding. And that made my anxiety go down by like a mile, because I was like, okay, I don't think I'm going to go into labor. But now, even if I did, he would make it back without there being danger of him getting in an accident in this unreliable car and So anyway, that was my win and now we have it for a month because our insurance covers a month-long rental. So yeah, it feels good to have a second car for a little bit, and we're hoping that we get another win when insurance finally gets back to us about our other car. But I hope my next win and our next episode is that I had a baby.
Yeah, it still will be the biggest win of the week.
There's some really good odds, guys, that in the next episode I will no longer be pregnant.
For sure. Probably.
My hope is that the next episode is titled Ande had a baby and Alyssa got an agent. That is my personal
We'll see.
my personal hope and dream. So we'll see.
Well,
Everyone in the comments, please pray for it. Do whatever you do for the things that you hope to happen. But like,
send good vibes.
all the things,
know.
whatever your thing is, please. We would love to see those 2 milestones in this little trio.
But, you know, one more pressing than the other. The baby. Not to clarify.
One is on a clock. The other one is
the
a
other
little
is
nebulous.
less on the clock.
You know,
It's a little more out
One
there.
of them is like real impending, real imminent, real soon. And you know, I hope personally that it's Alyssa's agent. No, I'm just kidding. I do selfishly hope it's me. I would love to have the baby.
Yeah. Well, that kind of goes into my win of the week. I'm not going to go into detail, but I would say the agent showcase did go pretty well. Yeah. So, also I did like a full rejection like 2 days later. But you know, we got to take the wins.
Gotta take the wins.
Of the week. So
you only need one yes.
Okay, my wins of the week are not as large life changes. Hold on, I'm gonna grab one of my wins of the week.
Ooh.
Wait.
Oh,
This is my win of the week. I got my matcha bowl back. I took a pottery class and they glazed it, and now I have this little thing.
Cute.
So that's the sleigh. And then my other win of the week is that I just last night saw Project Hail Mary, which we were talking about a little bit before this episode. And it was so lovely. It was so good. And I love just watching a great movie or just like engaging with any great art that just makes me feel like spunked about life and creating afterwards. So it was great. 10 out of 10.
Highly recommend. Yeah. If you haven't seen it, go see it. If you haven't read
So
it,
wholesome.
even if you don't like sci-fi, it's going to change your mind about sci-fi.
Give it a chance. Yeah,
So
give it
good.
a chance.
Or listen to the audiobook if you're me. That's what I did, and it was so good.
And I love to see people choosing hopeful stories just in general. It makes me happy because I do love a happy ending. I will be honest. So
Yes.
Give us more
nice
hope.
to see.
More hope.
Yeah,
in the
more
world.
hope.
Yes.
That's what we need. I think that's what we need.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and all of our channels. The people have been asking about if we can listen to it, and my promise to you is that by the time this episode is posted, I will figure out how to get this on podcasts. And
I feel like we could get to 500 subscribers with this episode.
think we can get
We're
to
pretty
1,000.
close. Girl.
I think we're pretty close. I mean, we're already at 464.
Hits 1,005 videos? Question mark.
I feel like we could do it.
I feel like we could do it.
I feel like
Keep
we're
subscribing.
This
to
is
the
a
channel.
juicy episode. This is almost an hour and a half long. I mean, prior to editing, but we are giving the content out here. Okay.
Awesome. Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.